I have intimate knowledge of what the US currently knows about UFOs minus the last 2 years. UFOs are primarily unmanned drones. UFOs are built to spec each time they are deployed. UFOs are created by a mobile construction facility that hides in the ocean. Construction facility destroys anything that comes close to it and will disappear for days when approached aggressively. US believes the facility has been active on Earth for at least 100 years or much longer. Fire away on questions, I'll answer what I can, you won't be disappointed.
What is the main body of government that is collecting information on UFOs? The DoD. If so, which branch is the most active in collection of information? What about biological entities? Are all UFOs come from the same source? I think there's probably more factions/groups of them. Does this have any relation to Oumuamua? Is there a working theory on the origins? If so, care to elaborate? Has any form of intelligible communication been established? Do they know who or what is creating these craft? Any potential that they are made by a higher branch of the U.S. government? What allows them to fly so fast? What technology? They are piloted by an undersea intelligence, aren't they?
It doesn't officially exist, and I won't use the internal name on here either. No. Quite a bit, but we think the construction facility has been around since at least 4000 BC. See sightings/paintings from the early eras of history. Yes. It also depends on your viewpoint. They mostly want very little to do with us until we start to talk about war and nuclear options. It's one of the reasons why you see them so often at critical events. Absolutely not. Gravity manipulation and the materials they are constructed from. We think the construction unit is driven by AI. The response time to threats is almost instant and usually very calculated and well thought out.
Is it related to that one under rock in that one Scandinavian country, the one that deploys within tectonic spaces?
No. This one almost never leaves the Bermuda Triangle.
Bullshit. Governments have, and have had for a while, advanced anti-gravity crafts.
You asked if the particular UFOs we study are the result of a foreign government, not if other governments have shittier versions. Speed alone tells us what we are looking at.
Do the UAPs return back to the manufacturing unit?
Yes. Some come in and leave the planet, but very rarely. Usually, the same number that comes and goes out unless special circumstances arise. It feels more like a carrier but with construction capability.
What are the purposes of the UAPs? Surveillance of humans.
The US believes they are not here to harm us. They only seem interested in us once they realize we are destroying things around us, including each other. One of the officials in charge said something that stuck with me. They act like keepers of a zoo, uninterested in the daily life of wildlife until there's a problem.
I can approach that facility without being attacked.
Lol. The last unit we saw approach the facility didn't even have time to communicate they were being attacked before it was over.
What's buried under the mesa on Skinwalker Ranch? Is that show even legitimate? It seems like some of the most legitimate research on anything paranormal that I've ever seen in my life, and I'm very curious about what they seem to be finding.
No idea that the project, if any, is likely kept separate. There were 2 rare elements found fused together that were under the mesa, and I'm very curious what's going on there. No idea about that either. The crafts we recover are built with numerous elements. Some aren't even obtainable here.
Are they friends?
They cut their losses when crashes are recovered. Same with personnel. Zookeepers aren't friends with the animals.
Do you know if the entities behind the UFOs are native to the Earth? Like an older civilization, breakaway civilization, or a civilization of humans that escaped a previous cycle of cataclysm due to their advanced tech?
Limited expertise, since my role is more craft/analysis. US believes they are foreign to our world. A previous cataclysm could make sense. They also show up in times of strife such as natural events.
Also, I think that other guy who was talking about approaching the area without being attacked is a remote viewer.
I lurked on other boards but haven't really been to this one since I was comfortable with the answers I had. I wasn't aware that was a thing on here. There were rumors among my coworkers that they had psionic abilities, but honestly, it rarely comes up in a conversation. Give it a shot?
Have you tried sending in a raft of hippies? The AI may not recognize them as a threat. JK.
Based on previous disappearances and acts of hostility, we believe the construction facility, carrier, has learned what is and isn't hostile. Usually, it will just move away or stay deep under the water. It doesn't fire on civilian boats, for example. Exceptions apply. We have seen 1 or 2 go missing, usually after sharp turns, etc.
Any relation to Antarctica?
My section monitored just this craft and any interactions it attempted. A previous coworker did mention something in passing of Antarctica at one point, but I ignored it, if I'm being honest. Talking about other projects is considered career suicide.
How about the destination of the space orbs? Is Jupiter a potential destination? I believe they are keeping a massive orb inside of the gas giant, though I have no evidence but many dreams of it.
No idea. If it is a project, I haven't seen it. No orbs out of the construction facility, just UFOs.
What units have been lost approaching this construction machine? Why have they not sent a Seawolf to investigate? The Jimmy Carter with its nanotech.
Everything you can think of, really. At one point nuclear missiles were being toyed with again, and we deployed fighters and a sub with serious intent. Everything except the sub was lost.
How have they come to the conclusion the UAP being released are ET, if they don't know what the UAP are to begin with them, or if there is nothing inside them? It's a pretty big jump to go right to ET.
They crash sometimes. Parts fail, and gravity engines near the surface of the planet can be like crossing an intersection. We recover these and sometimes find passengers. We mostly see drones now. Back in the earlier days we saw a lot more piloted craft. Why do you not know anything about the last 2 years? Just curious. Moved on from the project because of new management that didn't trust older proven methods.
Also, LOL, the last unit we saw approach the facility didn't even have time to communicate they were being attacked before it was over. Any details on what happened?
Normal approach details. Pilot responsive and actively talking. The feed cuts out, pilot still talking, suddenly nothing. Poor guy likely had no idea it was likely a suicide mission. Based on what we've seen, the construction facility has far superior weapons than the UFOs do. This weapon destroys the matter it hits entirely. It also shits on anything electronic in the vicinity.
I've had 2 orange orbs approach me to within 100 feet one night, glowing translucent, but rather dim like the setting sun seen through smog. They were flying in 45-degree formation like this, about 50 miles per hour.
Research/science vessels sometimes have mobile light producing cameras, used for multiple purposes from scouting to keeping threats contained or at bay. These are shaped like hammers and when operated are extremely bright. Red lights are a sign of hostility or caution to deploy weapons. Orange lights are usually for spotting minerals or living things.
As soon as I blinked my flashlight at them, they accelerated to several thousand knots and disappeared over the horizon. Searched YouTube and found several videos of the same objects, mostly near San Diego.
I'm not surprised. The range on those is quite large. The UFO was likely somewhere above you, quite high up.
Is the underwater base near Catalina Island creating these?
No. This one has only left the Atlantic Ocean twice. Both times were before I arrived.
Are aliens human or humanoid?
Humanoid. Very humanoid.
Then, do you know anything about abductions, forced breeding programs, etc.?
Bodies are removed before we are allowed to perform work. We definitely see some passing by, hence changes in older proven methods by new management.
Also, real true disclosure anytime soon?
The Air Force is extremely frustrated with the lack of progress on their end. We felt similar but are unable to share details with them. Out of everything ever found regarding UFOs in general, what is your personal favorite? New engine was deployed with a very large model that I had never seen before. We usually see 3 to 5 gravity producing engines, this one had 7. Favorite object or find? Probably the lab, since we never fully understood how it worked before it was destroyed. Makes me wonder whether a meaningful distinction between scientific study and amusement still exists for them, if it ever did. This was before my time, but they talked about a bus UFO that had more occupants than hardware. Most of the intended purpose appeared to be for physical viewing. I wondered if they ever just wanted to look at the animals. How long until we can hang with aliens? Have any retarded cousins that destroy everything they touch? When do you want to see them again? This is a strangely recurrent theme. At a minimum, they have psychotronic devices of some sort. This reminded me of something in my first year. UFO crashes. They remove the bodies well before my team arrives. We start to look and the craft is unpowered at first. A few minutes later the craft powers on and starts to close up. We radio out and get a response from the unit removing one of the occupants, alien, that they are working on it. Ship powers off and the other team asks if we are good to go. No mention of how access was possible. I suspect the pilot may have interfaced with the ship by remote or psionic ability. Not really translucent, but maybe the outer shell was. They definitely had an inner core that wasn't see-through. Lots of tools they use produce light. If this is still about the orb, the shell you may have seen was just the light around the device I called the hammer. Are there more than one construction facility? You mentioned one in the Bermuda Triangle. However, there are a lot of USOs off of the west coast of the Americas as well. Any insight? I suspect there may be, since we only watched the Atlantic Ocean and the UFOs we track normally don't stray far from home base. Asking about it would have been a bad move. In talking about the MCUs, are you talking about the one in the Pacific or the Arctic? Atlantic. I don't know of others. The mention of something in the Arctic was weird and brief when it came up. I read somewhere some UFO navigation systems require an ET whose own personal wavelength has been specifically attuned to the neural network of the craft. This tracks somewhat for me. When we look at the craft, we usually have to force certain things to work. Two teams come behind mine so that could be dedicated to understanding of the craft. Can you tell us what they look like physically? Usual gray type or big ears? Imagine the typical grays you see on TV. I've seen two corpses, so maybe there are different species, but I've never laid eyes on another. Anything about their culture, name, etc.? Rumors mostly. They almost never want anything to do with us. Mentions of destruction or warfare apparently change their attitude pretty quickly. What do you believe to be the reason for the uptick in sightings? Once again, my knowledge was cut off about 2 years ago. If you mean very recently, my guess would be the Russians and US having a little secret dance amongst themselves. When nuclear anything gets involved, we see large deployments for long periods of time. Strife seems to be the catalyst. Also, what is your scariest experience while engaging with the phenomenon? What was your favorite, if any? Doors closing on us as mentioned above made me wish I had brown pants. Still fascinated with the lab we found. It was damaged by accident and I never really got much time with it. Are you aware of any foreign tech that was successfully reverse engineered? Yes. We used to laugh at Russian and Chinese designs. We stopped laughing at China when they produced an operational, but buggy, version of their mining equipment. Still stumps most of our engineers. China also lies out of its ass, but from what we saw we deemed it operational and working. Countries listed above have flight-capable craft, just not very good ones. I'm honestly surprised no one has asked about the energy source or internals. Heading out for the night, but will be on tomorrow to answer more.
I've heard recovery of living pilots usually doesn't go well for either of us. Why?
One example was shortly after I joined. They said one was downed but 2 occupants were alive. The first team couldn't get close without being attacked. Aliens never seem to recover their lost UFOs for whatever reason, so they just waited a few days until they died, then recovered the UFO. Hostility is usually their last option. What is the energy source? You mentioned Bob, so I think I know already. Correctish, the power source is E115. The thing no one talks about is that usually, They seal it within the craft because it produces its own gravity field. Bob Lazar handled E-115, which was already pulled out, which is rare and weird. Protocol now is that only one person is allowed to handle E-115. I was forbidden from touching or interacting with it. We still have trouble producing this shit too. How do UFOs travel? In the context of those Tic Tac reports and Bob Lazar's report/video where they seemingly jump through spacetime and light to appear in a new location. Notice how it just phases to a new location? Like staggers? This is common when moving at high speed from a standstill or slow speed initially. Gravity distorts time and the object inside the field can stagger when traveling. I've heard the craft can detect the presence of a camera and when someone is filming them. Not unless the craft is put into a mode to detect a lens. No. If the UFO is standing still or hovering, though, they won't miss you. You can see a face like you're standing in front of someone a couple of miles out. Doesn't look like a camera, though their eyes are different. How are you able to talk about any of this? Didn't you swear to secrecy? Yes, liver cancer sucks. Wouldn't the government already have their eye on you, considering you could turn out to be a loose end? I'm not going on national TV or radio. I'm on a 4chan board. I'm sure they look at stuff like this, but cancer makes you a little feel different. Also, did you or your coworkers experience strange things outside of work that could have been related to what you saw? No, usually most people working there had no prior interest in UFOs, or at least feigned not having interest. The spheres are a type of unmanned surveillance drone. Shaped like a hammer, but when activated, yes, they appear like spheres due to the intense light. They see light differently, and looking into the sun for them isn't an issue like it is for us. I can't speak for the psionic abilities, if any, since I've only heard rumors in passing. We believed the lack of communication was inherent to their personal beliefs about us. As mentioned previously, but active serious discussion about destruction gets them going. Do you think they're playing some role in stopping rogue entities and dangers from space hurting us on a large scale? That was another theory, yes. We think they are more interested in keeping the planet safe from us. Two main suggestions are that we don't spoil the planet before they arrive and take it from us, or they are letting us evolve and grow while preventing devastation. Can you quickly walk through the process of identifying the contents of a crashed UFO craft? First team leaves that deals with occupants and initial discovery. We arrive and meet with an external member of the team who can touch and examine parts we are not allowed to interact with. We never have to cut our way into the UFO. We enter. The first order of business is checking for E-115, then leaving the ship together to send it away. We return and look for any tools and loose objects that can be extracted. We then start to strip any specialized components on board, such as sensory equipment or navigation. We leave and a third and fourth team arrive, likely to remove the bulk of the craft. Tell me about the mobile construction facility making them. Shaped like an extremely large UFO, but as one mentioned, more of a burger design. Almost never leaves the Atlantic Ocean. In fact, it will sit through hurricanes and only move elsewhere to release or receive a UFO. No visible weapons or cockpit from SAT footage. It also does not use any lights. Unlike other UFOs. Are there no other things making UFOs? Yes. UFOs arrive and depart Earth, but very infrequently. These UFOs are usually quite large. The US has been itching to get its hands on a freighter UFO when inbound or outbound, but the chance has never presented itself. Leadership openly stated securing one would result in promotion. Pay attention to the Space Force. We were told this would be a long project. Disinformation was one of the key takeaways. New management was hellbent on going back to secrecy. They thought we were way too open with our operation. Sounds like Ops ship is the later form. I would not be surprised if the pilots are in sentient craft. No, they are remotely controlled or directly controlled. The zookeeper analogy is strange. Agree with another here. That most zookeepers like their jobs and care about the animals. They display high levels of empathy. Some of the tools designed for abduction would make you rethink this. A lot of them cause pain or harm. A common tool we find is one that seems to scramble coherent thoughts and make the subject childlike. The best way I can describe its use is like forcing a stroke without actually having one. It makes you delirious but also childlike for a few hours. Are these beings incapable of empathy? Do they have emotions? I assume they must have learned something from the recovered bodies. Never interacted with them, only heard information passed along. They can be upset though with previously mentioned topics. They definitely have emotion. Are they from off-world and true ETs? The US and leadership were adamant they were off-world. If the Air Force is confused like you say, why is it the only agency we know of that is not cooperating with Congress in the RO? You might get a laugh out of this. The USAF is kept in the dark. We operated above them. A close coworker wondered if even the president knew, namely, Trump, because we both thought he would just tell everyone. Any idea what they might be waiting for? Personally, I think they just want us to grow and become sentient. UFOs arrive all the time and dock with the mobile construction unit. The way I see it, travel time is quite fast. If something was coming to destroy us, it would have arrived already. Are they human looking or do they resemble something else? Is it something we've seen written about in UFO topics or pop culture? They are smaller than humans and look like your typical gray aliens you see. Holes for ears, and they can look at very bright objects without being blinded. I've never seen one move their mouth, but I've also never interacted with one. Besides Russians, do any Europeans have data or programs researching this as well? They are mostly in the dark and probably on the same level as the USAF. And did SOCOM put up that open public contract trying to get someone to build them what equates to one of these UFO, in terms of capability, as a honeypot to try and catch non-human actors and military contracting companies? No idea. From my limited knowledge of the bio side, I doubt they are trying to infiltrate us. They seem to know a lot about us. Abductions still occur mostly in areas with contamination or disease. Did you hear anything related to a US secret space program? Not that I put any credibility into the words of Corey Good et al., but Gary McKinnon claimed to see files describing off-world personnel and ship names that did not exist. Yes, the US wants to be able to leave the solar system with their craft and explore. They were working tongue-in-cheek with the Russians before I left. I'm sure the invasion of Ukraine put a stop to that rather quickly. Do all nations coordinate their efforts studying this Bermuda Triangle factory, or is each doing their own thing? Each of them do their own thing. US is pretty greedy with what it finds. We will usually extract information but never offer any in return. What is the mining tool China has supposedly reverse engineered capable of? Hard to explain if you haven't seen it. Basically it extracts the minerals via beam/light directly out of the rock. It has the ability to fill the rock to some degree. China was able to figure out how it works and make a similar version. The problem with the one they built is it only operates for a few seconds before it runs out of power. They still don't understand E-115. It also exploded one time and they had to remake it. Are the made-to-spec craft you describe just the metal-looking spares observed and brought up in the latest RO hearings? Seem to be lots of orbs, discs, and tic-tacs. Yes, this is exactly why they always look so different. Things like triangles and hard-edged squares don't exist though. Pill shapes are extremely sought after and some we think are freighters. Even stories of MJ-12 suspect the president didn't have a need to know. Staff at our agency were usually older and had been there forever. This tracks when considering term limits. Many abduction stories seem malevolent. Previous post I mentioned tools. I think the harm they cause is the same as cutting open a mouse to check the local population for signs of bad health in a population. Collateral damage. Do they just not like humans? And like the planet? What's to stop them from just culling us all? They could absolutely destroy us if they wanted to. They have started launch sequences before that we suspect were tests on what they are dealing with. My personal view is they have to stay out of our way but keep us from destroying ourselves. I imagine life elsewhere in the universe often destroys itself. Do you think we will get more answers from the government? Disclosure as in them telling us aliens exist? Or will the cover-up continue? At one point they briefed us about opening up information about the craft but not the construction unit. Nothing happened for months. New leadership shows up suddenly, it's back to bullshit and secrets again. As to the USAF, they must have images and video of these things pretty close up. You'd think they would be the agency with the most knowledge of the subject. The USAF's goal is to fight other countries. They have footage, but it was mostly discovered and recorded by sheer chance. The Space Force, however, will be an entirely new thing. Their focus is similar to ours with a sprinkle of disinformation. Are all craft related to this factory in Grays? The ones we looked at, yes. Or are there more species coming here? Possible, but I wasn't made aware. It wouldn't shock me. I've wondered if we are being protected from others.
Abductions still occur mostly in areas with contamination or disease. Can you clarify?
They have a distinct fascination with radiation. Remember how I mentioned they don't go far from home base? When Fukushima happened, the construction facility deployed multiple UFOs to the location over multiple weeks. They were also very interested in Ebola at one point. We can't confirm abductions there since the local population is. You get the idea, no one cared. Does the moon hold anything of interest? No. That I'm aware of. We know that UFOs entering and exiting the atmosphere do not go towards any known planet often. 1. Are the flying orbs just scouts, research drones? Do you mean orbs in the sky? Or do you mean landed craft deploying them? I've mentioned previously that there are tools that are shaped like hammers. They emit extremely bright light and are used as a sort of drone or scout. They are able to view almost 360 degrees and detect everything from minerals to bio. If a human encounters them, they usually are deployed to keep watch and figure out when to wrap up and leave. 2. Do you think they interfere with our general science or investigations? Yes. They do not want to be studied. They also do not collect downed craft or occupants. It seems to be an oh fucking well approach. E-115 is the exception. They don't seem to enjoy the idea of us toying with it. Do they seem to learn when the craft get caught? Yes. There is an area they actively avoid in Mexico among others. They also deploy more drones than piloted craft unless absolutely necessary. Do they become harder to capture next time? Yes. 3. Is the technology they reproduce increasing rapidly or lags for years? I wouldn't say it's an increase in technology. It's more like adjustments/better understanding of how to operate. It's one reason we thought about 100 years for the first deployment of the construction facility. If we're here for years, we would have seen the majority of all adjustments made. 4. Is your department using AI to learn more about the findings you make around their tech? Not when I was around last, no. Does the factory produce any signature? Heat? Electromagnetic? How do you track it? Both. We rely mostly on detecting the gravity it produces. It normally doesn't produce heat outright. When it does, we believe it's in the process of construction, since a small heat buildup can be detected when a craft returns or exits. We think this happens when it's being broken back down into parts or assembled. We can only detect these heat signatures when it's near the surface of the ocean, so sometimes a UFO will pop out on us. How do you know about other countries' efforts? We don't obtain the information directly, it's passed along to us. My guess would be the typical way we get anything, such as spying at bribery. And why does the USAF not know about the other countries' efforts but your department does? My department sits above the USAF for UFO recovery and information in the same way the USAF sits above me on military plans for Ukraine. We were told at the time if we had to give away information, only tell the public what the USAF knows. I'm pretty sure other countries know departments like mine exist. Alternatively, do they know about US efforts? Russia and China, yes. Others, it depends on the level of information. Some governments still don't know aliens even exist or aren't sure. How do we know you aren't some FBI agent or other glowy There's no way for me to prove that to you. You should always be asking though. All I can say is pay attention to things as time progresses and you'll be able to look back and see I was right. Are they following the SpaceX operations? They respond rather quickly to any type of rocketry. I imagine they will be. What role do you think Space Force will play in disclosure moving forward? Openly stated to us discovery for internal use and disinformation to the public. What can we as a populace do to encourage your bosses to lighten up? This has always been on my mind. I think if we convinced another nation like China or Russia to come out, the US would have to come out as well. I think having the USAF release their footage was a way to jumpstart SpaceX in a way. The Pentagon has already reported that the legit WAPs are off-world vehicles not made on this Earth, while OP is claiming they are made in a facility in the oceans. I stated multiple times we've seen them come and go from the planet. We suspect the construction facility is capable of space travel as well. Any info about the crop circles? Never seen one or heard of it being relevant. Has there been any unusual effects on the environment/wildlife? No. They do study animals. Why/how are they avoiding Mexico? One area around there is a bad crash zone for them. Why was 2002 a big year? A lot of activities and changes in operation both for them and us. A lot of secrecy issues surfaced that year as a result. Funding also jumped through the roof. Is this lob stressful? Very. Strained my marriage greatly. Does it have anything to do with your illness? I've wondered about that, but ultimately I'll never know. How does the government prevent or respond to potential national security threats posed by UFOs coming/going in/out of the atmosphere/ocean? Wait for crashes. The only time everyone is all hands on deck is if they screw with nukes. We mostly just watch and wait for them to fuck up. Just to steal/learn tech. It's been a bit of a rough week for me. It's still going to be a rough week for me, so I may not reply as much. Drop your questions and criticisms and I'll answer them as best I can. I'll address some of the other questions I saw elsewhere below. I don't know anything about the Moon Man post. No interest in a trip code. It sounds pretentious. You should be skeptical. Over time though, I think a lot of people will find themselves coming back to what I've said. How other countries know about the existence of this underwater facility? The same way we do. They've been looking at crash sites as long as we have. I know last thread you said it's an all hands on deck situation if the crafts start messing with our nukes. Correct. Does this happen often? About once every 10 years for the US. We suspect other countries have had similar issues and reactions. What kind of reaction is there when these events occur? A higher-up joked months after the last one I saw that the phone rings everywhere but the president's office. In the same instance I mentioned above, they deployed multiple aircraft and a sub with serious intent. The sub didn't arrive in time. Fighters probably never saw the end coming. Is this related to the underwater structure that Gordon Cooper cited and Discovery Channel had to cancel that show for season 3? Nothing in those pictures rings a bell. If you see the construction facility you'll know. You can't miss it. As for if they were instructed to leave, that could be true. Your answer on tools you found in vehicles makes you seem like you are LARPing. There must have been more advanced and intruding tools than fucking toothpick. I had to think a bit about this one for multiple reasons, and I think I'll cover the abduction tools in greater detail. There are tools that induce a childlike state or something akin to having a stroke. We covered that. The tools I didn't talk about are ones that are designed to take objects the size of pills and push them deep into your tissue and stomach. These tools aren't friendly and don't account for extreme pain. There's also another tool that looks like a circular battery you would find in a key fob. Designed for keeping your eyes open when deployed. It also stops the eye from moving almost perfectly. How on earth would it be possible to maintain a secret with such a large amount of people constantly in the know? Not just over years, but literally decades. That's just it. They haven't been able to maintain secrecy. That's a major reason the previous management didn't mind us being so open with each other. If you mean more historically, as in the past 20 years or more, now you know why I find references to MJ12 funny. Secrecy is all but gone. Now it's just about obfuscation and misinformation.
If they interfere when there is a nuclear threat, why didn't they prevent the WW2 nukes?
We talked about this a lot, and honestly, we never came to a solid conclusion other than they may not have realized our capability until we used them. They were interested in test sites but never actually stopped the ones we set off.